think our numbers have stopped climbing. So we might still have a few people popping in, but I also want to respect the time and give you the whole time that you've got available. So I'm going to get us started here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to breakout session 2A. This is Alchemer Beyond the Basics, optimizing surveys to work for you. A little bit of an overview to make sure you're in the right place. This is the advanced session that builds off of this morning's Alchemer 101. It's designed for users who are already comfortable with Alchemer and want to take their surveys further. Our presenter is going to explore more complex logic, advanced question types, automated workflows, and reporting features that help streamline data collection and close the loop on feedback. Today's session will be led by Annie Clymer. For those that weren't on the morning session, or I guess maybe you weren't on the morning session, Annie, sorry about that. Annie's been with Alchemer for a little over 6 years, working across technical support and onboarding. She partners closely with customers to align technical solutions with their goals and create customized training materials that are practical and easy to apply. And Annie has let me know that she welcomes questions as she goes along. So feel free to jump in when you have anything. And Annie, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, hi. Nice to meet everyone. So as Emily said, we're going to be um, doing some more advanced features. So now that we've covered the basics, we build on that foundation. So we'll look at ways to further customize your surveys, take action on your data, and then show how all of these pieces come together for those more advanced setups. So we'll be looking at things like labels and reporting values, question settings, piping and repeating, actions, tracking links, and then an intro into workflow. And I am joined by my colleagues, Brendan and Emel. So if you guys have any questions that you want to drop in the chat, they'll be monitoring that as well, or feel free to ask the question to the group. So, um, getting started here. First things first is if you did miss that first session, outside of these courses, you do have um, resources for you. So while you're building, while you're getting your project set up, you can come here to this help tab and search any keywords for our documentation that will give you instructions on how to get things set up. And you can also contact our support team. So you can either call in to our call center 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can also submit a ticket through email, and you also have Alchemer University available to you, which gives you short YouTube-like tutorials. That way you can have a visual with an explanation while you're making your clicks. But for today's lesson, we are going to start off with labels and reporting values. Now, ML touched on this briefly in her earlier session. We can do this in two different ways. The first way is on the question level, and then the second way is on a survey bulk level. Labels and reporting values are good for your backend data. So, for example, if you have a very long descriptive question title, that is going to be pulling back into your reports and your exports as well. So you can give it a more concise name to just kind of clean up your data on the back end. Along with that, any answer option titles, if you want to do statistics in the back end, we want to add numeric values to these. We can do that here in the question level by coming to our advanced options and our reporting values. As you can see here, we have it set to auto. That's just that answer option title. But we could set it to something sequential or custom as well. And that is going to give us these numbers on the back end that we can then utilize for those stats. Now, if you already have your survey built out, you can add these in bulk by coming here to results and then edit reporting values and labels. This is essentially just going to give you the build of your survey where you can then come through and select your reporting values or type them in as needed along with your labels for your question titles. Now, reporting values versus our answer option labels are going to start to come in handy when we start to look at how our merge codes are used. We're going to be showing some examples throughout this lesson on exactly what we can do with these merge codes. So the first is going to be what's called simple piping. This is when we want to pull an answer option into the title of our sequential question title. So you can see here that through simple piping, we're going to use a merge code to display this on a later page. When it comes to piping or using merge codes, typically you need a page break in between these questions. That's because this question's answer needs to be rendered and in the system to be available to use dynamically later in the survey. So how we can do this is coming in here to our question title, and we're essentially going to insert this merge code. A merge code is a snippet of code that dynamically pulls in data for us. We're going to use that snippet of code as if it's part of the sentence. So here we can come to our merge code selector and we can say we want to dynamically pull in how that respondent answered the question. So here we have the question answer. All of our merge codes are going to typically be in this sort of a format. So we're going to have our brackets, and then it's going to tell us where it's going to be pulling this data from. If I save my question, and if you have those settings on that ML spoke about earlier, about, page IDs and question IDs, then we can begin to reference where this merge code is going to be pulling data from. So it's looking at question ID 2 and pulling in that value. Now we can see here, here's our question ID 2. As I said earlier, there's going to be a difference between um, if you have question titles and reporting values. And if you remember, we did set a reporting value for this question. So we need to think about that when we're looking at our merge codes. Currently, it's going to be pulling in that value. So this would say you said that you were 6, for example. So if we want to pull in that answer option title as opposed to the reporting value, we can edit this merge code to say title. Just so you can see what this looks like, if we were to preview, we're saying we're satisfied. When we click on next, you said you were satisfied. There are some more things that we can do with those merge codes. For example, we can put on some tags to make sure that it pulls in that option title lowercase so it fits into the sentence better. And that's some documentation that we can follow up with you after our call. More ways to pipe would be pulling in answer options from a previous question and using it as answer options in a subsequent question. So once again, you'll notice I have a page break here. I want to pull in all of the ice creams they purchased this year and then have them rate it. Coming into our target question, we're going to edit, and along the top we have our piping and repeat tab. I'm going to select the question that I want to pull in those answer options from. And you do see that we have the ability to also pipe in unselected items should you have that use case. In our case, we're going to be piping in what they did select so that way they can rate. Now, since we are dynamically pulling those in from our question 3 here, that means that we don't have to have these row headers defined unless there was some sort of static value. Like let's say this is your ice cream brand, you always want it in the ranking. Um, in our case here, we don't need them defined because we're going to be dynamically pulling those in. So I'm going to save this question. And just so you can see what this looks like, we'll go ahead and pull in a few. And now you can see it will just pull in those brands. So this can make the question more relevant to the respondent. It can also save you some clicks when it comes to uh, row option, for example. Other things that we can do is either repeat a question or a page of questions based on those selected items. So let's say that we had a follow-up question or even a page of follow-up questions where we want them to answer some sort of a rating question, a Likert, an NPS, and we want them to have this question available for them per each of those selections that they made. So we'll be referencing that ice cream question again. And we're also going to be using a merge code as well. So that way we can dynamically pull in the ice cream title so they know which one they're actually answering for. First things first is coming back to that piping and repeating tab. Here I'm going to select my target question, which is my ice cream brands, and I'm going to repeat this question based on those answers. And this is going to give us some merge codes. Once again, we talked about that difference between title and value. So if I had reporting values attached to my ice cream titles, I would want to make sure to pull in this piped title. And we're going to copy and paste that once again and use it as if it's part of the sentence. So we'll come in here, add our merge code, and we'll give it a test. Heading back to my trigger question, we'll preview. Let's do two selections here. We've got our ranking question, but now we come to that question, that page where we have the question repeating. And you can see that it's going to be pulling that in for us. And so that way the respondent knows which one they're giving the rating to. So once again, this can save you some clicks, and it can also dynamically pull in those names for you through the use of merge codes. Now, here's another fun trick for you. If you have those long surveys, you start to run into this pagination here. So yes, we do have show up to 10 pages at a time. If you have a survey that's longer than that and you want to unfurl your whole survey, what you can do is come up here to our URL. And right after the survey ID will always be at your build right after this ID. We'll come up here and put a question mark, C equals 0. That will get rid of all of the pagination in your survey. You'll be able to scroll from top to bottom. This is helpful, especially when you're starting to set up logic rules, and you've got some logic that's earlier in your survey that you need to apply later. It'll unfurl it so you can scroll through this easily. Okay. More things that we can do within the survey is some of our question settings. When it comes to open text, a lot of times people can run into spelling errors from their respondents, can make their data, they have to go in and start to clean up spelling mistakes, things of that nature. If you ever have one of these open text questions, there's some settings in here that you can know about, and one of them is going to be autofill. So, or auto suggest, excuse me. So coming down over here to our validation tab, this is where we can put some auto suggest options within here. What that does is as the respondent is coming through, as they start to type out, it's going to bring up those options that we put in the auto suggest, and this gives the ability for them to select and keep that spelling and that data clean. Some more options that we can do is a default answer. So let's say they put in their school here that their child attended, but they also want to know what other schools has their child attended. We can auto select what they answered up here through the use of the default answer. We'll edit our question. This is going to be underneath our layout tab. And if we scroll all the way down, we'll find our default answer here. You're going to see that merge code selector. This is going to open up our survey, and now we can pull in that question answer. So as you can see, this is looking at question value for ID 21. We know we're in the right place here by checking out our survey build. And now if we come through, we'll add a school name, head to next. We can see that's already pre-selected for us. Kind of streamlines the experience for the respondent. Other settings that we can play around with. Once again, this is one of our open text. This is going to be a phone number question. Heading to our validation tab, we do have our answer option format here where we can select, I want to make sure that this is a number. I want to make sure that this is a whole number or a positive number. Now, in our case, what we can do is have this in a phone number format. So coming in here, we're going to head over to our regex underneath our drop down, and we have common regex patterns. Regex is essentially code that forces the answer into a specific format. So coming to our common patterns, we can say we want this to be a US phone number. So that's going to give us that area code, a dash, three numbers, a dash, four numbers. Um, Now, if you're not seeing exactly what you're looking for within this regex patterns that you can that we have available already, you can also create your own regex. You can find a website that'll do that regex for free, and you can put in your custom regex. So once again, that just kind of helps clean up your data. Um, but other things, email, you want to make sure there's that at domain.com or at domain.edu. Things to think about as you are building out your survey. Some more settings would be randomizing answer options, and this can help to combat on survey bias. So you can come through here, edit your question, and I believe it's under the layout tab. This is where we can come to our option sorting and then randomize these answer options. So as you're building your questions, it's always good to think about your reporting on the back end, but now you have this extra layer on how to customize this further. Okay. Coming to some of our more advanced question types, we would get a lot of calls into our support team asking, they'll have a text box list, for example. In our text box list, it looks very similar to this. However, it's not doing the math for you or forcing your answer options to be in a specific format. Here's where we can look at our continuous sum question. Once again, it looks just like a text box list would. However, when we come over to our validation tab, this is where we can start to play around with exactly how this answer is going to turn out. Like, do we want a max total? Do we want this to be in percent? Or is this a number question asking how much of the budget did you spend on each of these? So this is where we can come in and start to say, you know, it must equal this max total. If we don't necessarily need to show this to the respondent, we don't have to. We have the option to hide it. Do we want it to be whole numbers or positive numbers? And then do we want to limit the answers? Um, or, how many rows should they have to answer, for example? And so this will do the math for you. You can come through here and start to say, so it's 30% of our time, 45% of our time. You can see that it'll start calculating it out for the respondent here as well. Some other common questions that we've gotten before is how to display these questions. We want to display them side by side, give it a nice look. And there's a few ways that we can do this. This first is going to be the custom table. So what this allows you to do is essentially have a matrix question, but have different question types within this matrix. So you can see here, if we were to preview this, for business, I do first class and I make sure that I'm going out in the morning. So it groups them together for an easy survey experience. And to get this set up, you can see here we've got our column headers. And within these column headers, if we were to edit these, that's where we can show the question type that's available that will fit into this custom table. So we could do radio button, drop down, checkbox, text box, or essay, and then we can start to define our answer options. And that goes the same for any other column headers that you want. If there's another column header that you want, you would come in here and then begin to define that. Another way people group questions together is the custom group. So here it's going to be very similar, but it's not going to be in that matrix format. However, this does have some functionality that that custom table does not. And I'll show you that here in a second. It's going to look very similar. Here's our sub questions. You can come through to each of these sub questions and then define what question type that is. There are more question types available for the question group as opposed to the table. But what's neat about this question is you have the option for the respondent to add another cluster of those questions. So for this example, we're entering the information for your student. If we come here to the Logic tab and scroll all the way to the bottom, we have the option to allow the respondents to duplicate these group of questions. Um, and we have some options on how we want to display those buttons as well. And also the max repetition. So if we don't want somebody adding, you know, 45 students, you know, you do have the option to make sure they can't go past that marker. And what this looks like here, we've got our student information. We want to add another student. So now they have the option to continue for as much as needed. This helps with, it helps save you some clicks. You don't have to build question logic into that. Um, and there's also, if they accidentally hit that button, they can remove that through here. I'm going to use my URL variable hack for my C equals 0 to unfurl my survey build. Okay. Now, as we're coming into some of these other question types, these are locked into only full access license types um, has access to add these question types. However, if you are on an account, you're at a professional license, you can ask someone on your account that has a full access to add this for you if needed. But here we have things such as the conjoint. So this is more of a market research question where you can start to combine different attributes together and see which combination is going to be the most likely influential for that customer. In our example, we use TVs, but you can see here that we've got our attributes, so our resolution levels. What is its refresh rate? What's its price point? Does it have Wi-Fi? And we can start to show how many of these attributes we're going to show per set, and then how many sets are going to be shown to the respondent. During survey taking, what that looks like, it's forcing them to look at these attribute combinations and then select which one's more likely for them to purchase. We also have our max diff. So this is a question type where, you want people to say what's most important to you. If you have all of these on a grid, maybe all of them are the most important to you. You want all of these. This sounds great. This is going to um, show these options, and you're going to have to rate them against each other essentially. So that way you can really start to drill down and see the relative importance of what's being rated. When we come in here to edit this question, we can change the orientation of what we're showing. We can change our labels and then also show, how many attributes per set and how many sets per respondent. Just so you can see what this looks like. Oh, just kidding. Just so you can see what this looks like. Let's see if it'll let us do it. It's being feisty with me right now. Um, but that's an option for you. Once again, this would be a full access license level that you would need to use, or have one of your colleagues add that for you. So now that we've gone through some of the settings on, our basic builds, we can start to think about the different actions that we can take on our survey. Coming down here, you'll see the action on the bottom of each of these pages. You can put actions, at the beginning of your survey, in the middle, at the end. It really depends on which action you're using. So we'll go over some of the more popular actions here. Um, for example, a URL redirect. This is, when a respondent reaches the end of your survey, you can send them to your specific website. Now you can put a delay, a few seconds, so they're able to see this thank you message. You can also set up logic to only fire this URL based on a condition in the survey. For example, if they attended a specific school this year, you can use logic to send the respondent to that school's website. And you can have multiple URL redirections, URL redirect actions with logic on them that will send the respondent to the correct web page as needed. Another action that's quite popular is our send email action. You can use the send email action to notify the respondent once they have submitted a survey, let them know you've received that submission. You can send a send email action to yourself, letting yourself know a new response has come in. You can set up logic on this email action, um, going to the correct manager or the correct team. So coming in here to add a send email action, um, if you do have uh, custom email settings, that's something that you can utilize. So that'd be coming from your domain as opposed to Alchemer. If you have an email question within your survey, you can pull in a merge code from your survey picker and have it send out dynamically to that respondent. We could send this to our product team. We can change our subject line, and this is sample text. So you're going to want to make sure that you get rid of all that sample text. Now we can further customize this by using merge codes to dynamically pull in that respondent's answer. For example, we could come in here and just insert all of the questions. That'll automatically put in all of those questions with the merge codes to fill in that person's response, but we could also use that picker to simply pull in pieces of data that's important to us. So we'll come to that merge code picker. We'll pull in that school name. Now, another thing we can do here is send them a PDF. Under our Advanced tab, we have this PDF sending feature where we can only include questions that were displayed to the survey taker or only include answered questions. Um, And on top of this, we can set logic on this email action as well. Let's say we only want to send this to our product team if we got a bad review or there is some other condition within the survey. Now, another action that is utilized a lot within Alchemer is going to be our hidden value action. Um, Coming over here, if you were in our first session today, you might recognize this birthday and anniversary recognition form. Within that email campaign, Emil had uploaded some data about the respondent. Once again, through the use of those merge codes, we can pull in that contact's first name. But here you can see we have these hidden value actions. And essentially what that is a text box that is hidden from the respondent, but you're able to gather data about that respondent on the back end. You'll find that here under Actions and Hidden Value, and we're going to add that in. Now, it's always good to title your hidden values. If you don't, and you have multiple hidden values that are pulling in data for us on the back end, it's all just going to say hidden value action. So make sure that you label those so you're not doing a blind guessing game on which one you're trying to pick. But this is where you can give it that title, come in here to your merge codes, and then go in and pick whatever data you're looking for about that respondent. If you are utilizing URL variables, this is where you can come to About the Respondent and our URL variable. It's always best practice if you are using URL variables and capturing those to put this in value on the first page. Where these three X's are is where you can put in your variable name. So here we've got school, for example. This will look up at the URL or that share link, and if it has the variable school, it'll dynamically pull in the value for that. So that's a few of our actions, the most popular that are used. Um, and we can show you or give you guys some documentation if there's any others or if there's any questions in the chat about that. Okay, let's see. Where are we going next? Next, we're going to be looking at multiple tracking links and campaigns and how you can utilize those both with customizing your survey, for example, or with your reporting and segmenting on the back end. Coming here to our Share tab. There are multiple ways to share this survey, and as ML said, um, or went over, we did hit those email campaigns. So that's when you have a contact list, you've got some data about them, you want to send out an email blast. Those email campaigns do have save and continue. It has duplicate protection built in. There are some settings that you can change that with. But other ways to share our survey would be, for example, download for offline use. Let's say you're at a farmer's market, you're not connected to the Wi-Fi, but you still want to gather data on your tablet as you walk around the farmer's market. You can download your survey onto that tablet, be offline, collect data, and then once you're back connected to the Wi-Fi, you can upload those responses. We also have a QR code. If you know that you're going to have a lot of survey takers, I say come here to the Share tab, get out your mobile device, and take the survey as a real response on this QR code. Um, when it comes to our questions, they do have to change what they look like to fit a smaller screen. So this way, you know what it's going to look like on mobile before you go live, and you can move forward confidently. Next, we have our kiosk mode. You can think of this as you've got a tablet at the doctor's office next to the desk. A patient can come up, take the survey on that tablet while they're waiting. Once they hit that thank you page, it'll refresh and then a new survey response will come up automatically without you having to man that system. We can embed your survey onto your website through JavaScript, iframe, HTML, and pop-up. We also have the website intercept. So this would be a pop-up survey, much like that embedded, but you're allowed to put some rules on when that's going to pop up. Now, let's say that we want to collect in all ways under one survey. We can start to create specific links for each of these. For example, I want to create a link that's just going to be for my offline use. I can come in here. We're going to have our offline use. And this is going to be the link that we are going to share or that we're going to download onto our tablet. You can edit these links if you have a private domain. That's something you can think about as well. And I also know that I'm going to be using a QR code that I'm going to post around campus. I can create another link for my QR code. This is the link that's going to be shared. And as you start to see that I'm creating these different links that I'm going to be sharing for my different routes, we'll even do a quick email campaign in here as well. Now what I'm able to do is share this same survey, have the data aggregated under one umbrella, but I'll be able to segment these out in my data on the back end and also customize what the survey looks like to respondents. So here for my offline use, I can come to share. I'm going to download that survey offline. For my QR code, I'm coming here to share. This is where I can print out my QR code. We can style these links differently. Coming here to the Style tab, if you click on our link here, you can see I've got my email campaign, my QR code, my offline. You could think of this, what if it's for different schools? You can have the different school mascot, that school's colors. Um, you can use these different links for logic. Only show this page to Crestview. Only show this page to Fairview. And also within your results, this is where you can have an aggregated report that has all of the data. I won't have any responses in here, but just so you can see the filters, um, an aggregated report here. We can filter it based off of those links. So I can have a second report that's just for my offline. Or we could look at how this data, excuse me, we could look at how this data or how these different share sources answered against each other. Okay. Do we have any questions there or in the chat regarding different tracking links or actions that we can take? Okay. Well, in that case, we will head over to our workflow product. Now, coming into our survey dashboard, you're going to find your workflow product up here. By clicking on these waffles, you'll also see some of our other products, such as our digital SDK product, but we're going to be focusing here on workflow. So essentially what workflow is it automatically helps you route survey responses either to the right people. It automates triggers for follow-up actions, and it just kind of helps so things don't slip through the cracks. So instead of having to manually check survey results and email people, the workflow lets you send notifications when specific responses are submitted. It helps you assign tasks to the right teams based on specific answers. We can track follow-up progress in one place, such as like a 30, 60, 90 follow-up. And you can really think of workflow at a high level as listening, evaluating, and then acting on something. So some use cases where we could use workflow is going to be customer complaint escalation, account, event, or ticket follow-ups. So did someone just open a bank account or did someone just have a doctor's appointment or was a support ticket closed? This is where we can start to listen for certain things happening, evaluate what's going on, and then take some action and send that out. So we'll walk through a simple workflow setup here or example. And then if we have time, we can go over what some of our other users have been doing with their workflows as well. Coming to create a workflow, and it is the 28th already. We're going to start building. So our first step is what is going to initiate this workflow. So this is kind of the listen step to it. So we've got a few different routes that we can take here. Now, we're going to be doing a survey listener initiator. So this workflow is listening for a new survey response, and then it kicks off the follow-up steps that we're going to define without needing to monitor this or, check out these results manually. So essentially, you don't need to know really anything about the automation getting started. You just decide what wants to happen as a survey comes in and then let the workflow do the rest. Now you see that we do have some third-party listeners. So in Alchemer, the workflow will start when something happens, or sorry, this will start kick off that workflow when something happens outside of Alchemer. So instead of internally listening for a survey response, this type of workflow listens for data sent in from another system like a CRM or a help desk or an internal tool. But we are going to start with this survey listener. So first step is what survey are we listening to? In this case, we're going to have a class registration form. So once the respondent registers for a class, hits the thank you page, then our workflow is going to start off. And if we look at this class registration survey, we can see this is what they're signing up for. If you have hidden value actions, you can store data about those classes that we can use merge codes to dynamically pull into the workflow, pull into our work steps, use logic based off of it. And then any other information that's important. You know, what's the student's name? What's their email, contact information? All of that data we can now use within our workflow. So let's say my first step is I want to send a reminder to these students a week before the class gets set out. Since there's two courses that they can choose from, we can use logic based on the answer from our registration survey. So the first step I'm going to do is pull over my logic step, and I can edit this and say, we're going to be looking at this registration form. That's our initial survey. And this is going to be our email, our reminder email to the AI and machine learning course. We can save that. Now we can add in our email reminding them that there's going to be a course starting soon. Coming in here to our send email, when we edit this, we'll come to our merge code selector, and we're going to make sure that we are getting that student email from our survey. So it's dynamically sending out to that student. We can put in, the from name, the subject line, and then here in the subject line, we can start to pull in data such as, you know, um, what's the start date for that AI class? Who's going to be the professor? And you can use these merge codes once again, like it's part of the sentence. So please find your textbook. Mm, Please find your textbook. We'll add in that textbook at the North Store. So you can either have this in the survey, you can have it, you can just write these emails in. Um, and you do one for each of those courses. Now, let's say that course doesn't start until the end of February. We can send a delay to send this out a week before that course starts. So now we've pulled over our delay action. When we come in here to edit, we do have the hour or the hour. We do have the option to set these to either, hours, days, weeks. But in our case, if we know that course is going to be starting on the 28th, we can come in here to our date and time selector, and we want to send this out a week before that course starts. You also can define the hours, minutes as well here for when that sends out. So now that we have that built, um, we can even do a secondary step. Let's say that after the course is finished, we want to send out a survey to the student asking for feedback. Did they like the class? Did they not like the class? Things of that nature. Once again, we can add that delay step. And if we know that the course ends at the end of March, we can say we don't want to take any action until a week after those courses end. And then here's where we can send our survey out. So in our case, we can do a survey invite. We're going to be sending this out to our student by selecting our merge code, looking at our survey listener, pulling in that survey email. So you can start to see how this can begin to get really customized. You can use data from either your CRM, a previous survey, and then come in here and get our survey that we want to send out. So in our case, we want to send out the review for that course. So we'll say, here's our feedback survey. So now all that's happening is you're sharing this initial survey with somebody. They're registering. You don't have to worry about any reminder emails that are going out. You can use logic to make sure that they're going out to the correct person. You can set delays and have different surveys go out back to that student, making sure that they are satisfied with their class. And you can even take it farther than that. Here on the right-hand side, we can send a Slack action to managers if there's a bad review. We can push that data into Salesforce. So there's lots of different routes that we can take when it comes to setting up these different workflows and a lot of different use cases as well. Some other, just to get your creative juices flowing, some other setups that we've had here. Here for Jefferson, in this use case, somebody's opening a bank account, and they're either going to be opening that online or in person, and they're using a specific software that opens that bank account for them. And they want to begin to trigger a survey asking, was this easy to open the bank account? Did you have any trouble? Was the representative helpful? Things of that nature. They just want that to be automatically sent out once a bank account is open without having to deal with contact lists. They already have all the information about those contacts within their banking system. Here, what we have is a custom webhook initiator. And what this looks like is, while it thinks, this allows us to get a webhook URL to put into a third-party system. So this is what's going to be listening outside of the Alchemer system. When that bank account is opened, this is where we can define what do we want to pull in from that third-party system. We want name, email, phone number, location, the account, if they're a gold or a silver member, any sort of information that you need within your workflow and that third-party system has, you can then use to pull in. And here's where the fun begins. This is where we can send that invite out saying, welcome gold member, welcome. Um, you can use these merge codes within the title as well. You can see here, it's pulling in the member. So you can start to customize the respondent experience. You can pull in that bank account, the member level, the open date, where it was located. There's those hidden values capturing data for us, either to use for our results in the back end, for filtering. We can use this information to drive logic through our survey pages. Coming back to the workflow builder, we can also send out reminders to take a survey. So in this case, we're going to be waiting 3 days. And for our reminder email, the conditions that we're looking at, so we're looking at that Jefferson survey and we're saying, is this response status partial or have they not started yet? And if that's the case, then we can send out another survey invite, just reminding them and giving them a nudge to take that survey and complete it. So different use cases. It is a powerful tool. And once again, as you're starting to think about how to use these things, think about use cases for you. If you ever get stuck, that's where you can contact our support team and see what's feasible, what can I do? Um, or if you have troubleshooting issues, if you're getting stuck on a step, that's another area where you can contact us and we can start to look through, why is the person not proceeding to this next step? Do we have any questions here? All right, we've got about 5 minutes left for any questions or comments that we can go over. Or if something wasn't unclear, we can go over that again as well. It's after lunch. It's always more quiet after lunch.
I was going to say, if you do have more that you'd like to share, we actually have until 3:40 Eastern time. So you have about 15 more minutes if there's
Oh,
anything that you would like to continue sharing. Uh,
okay.
I know the timing was kind of weird. It's an hour and 10 minutes to allow time for questions. So yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let me think of what else we could share. Are you guys more interested in workflow? Are you more interested in things within the survey? Do you have use cases that we could go over?
You have had a couple of questions surrounding the Excel integration about importing a CSV of addresses or simple copy paste work if they wanted to send to a specific existing list. Not necessarily. So I don't know if you want to copy that more in depth around the Excel integrations or,
Yeah,
and the
we could
options
do
that
a
we have
quick
around there.
we could do a quick Excel integration. Let me Let me pull up an Excel spreadsheet real quick so that way you guys can see how we can do push and pull with our Excel integration. So let's see here. Chef. Okay. Okay, here it is. All right, let me get my screen shared again for us. Okay. All right. So, this was an example where we can do a pull and push action with Excel. When it comes to that Excel integration, whatever your spreadsheet is, whether you're doing a push or a pull, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a header for your column rows. And you're also going to want to make sure that this is in a table format. So to do that, you would come here to Insert, and then you would do Table, and then you would define what you want in your table. So here we've got a store ID, and then we've got some data about those stores. So what district, what region, what's that store name? In this example, we're using this store ID to query which row it's going to be pulling data from Excel. Now, those Excel actions are going to be right here in this Action tab. If you scroll down and you have Microsoft 365, that's going to be that pull or push action that you can then add. One thing to note is if you do have Excel on your account, you're going to want to make sure that your admin has given you the permission to utilize these integrations. Where they'll come for that is here under Account, User Management, and then Users. And within that user, right here under Permissions, we want to make them an Integrations Manager. If you're not, you're going to have a lock on that box and you won't be able to utilize that. Now, when we're looking at these actions, there's some things that we're going to need to think about first. Do you have a SharePoint or a OneDrive? Those two are necessary to have your spreadsheet in when you're utilizing this. You're also going to need to authenticate. You can have more than one SharePoint or OneDrive account, but you will need to authenticate through our third-party system, Tray.io, and I believe Emel can drop some of that security information in there. Clicking on Next, my document is in a OneDrive. We're going to have to share the folder path. So mine's underneath my Documents folder. My workbook, you'll have to select that from your drop-down. You also have to select your worksheet and then define the table as well. So that's that table that we created. Now here is where we're going to query to make sure we're pulling or pushing data into the right row. So here's that store ID. You want to make sure that with these actions you have a unique identifier such as an ID, an email address, something that's more unique than a birthday or the name John Smith, something of that example. And we're going to match that field from Alchemer into that field that's in Excel. You can also play around with that data type. So do you want it string? Is it going to be a number? In our next action, this is where we're going to map our fields. So we're going to make sure that the district matches the district in the Alchemer survey field. Here's those hidden values where I'm going to be pulling that information and capturing them in Alchemer. So now that we have that saved, just so you can kind of see what this looks like, if I take this survey and I put in a store ID, it'll be referencing that store ID number within my Excel sheet. And then I can use that information later in the survey or just in the back end for my reporting. Now for an Excel push, it's going to be very similar. You're going to want to make sure that your Excel push is on a page subsequent from any of the data that you want to capture and push over. But we'll head to our action, head to my integrations, Microsoft 365, and we'll add that in. And you have some options with this Excel integration. So we've got update, we can get, we can push, or we could push structured responses. In our case, we will push, and it's going to be very similar to that pull. I don't believe I have a spreadsheet set up specifically for a push action. So we're going to use our imaginations a little bit here, but we're going to do that OneDrive. We're going to define our folder path. Click Next. We're going to select our workbook. In this case, we'll just use our April contact list, for example. And I don't believe I have a table for that actually now, but same steps here. This is where you start to drill in where in your OneDrive or your SharePoint all of this stuff lives. You're going to find that query. So think about that unique identifier, email address, employee ID, so that way it knows where to push that data into your spreadsheet. Do we have any questions here? Okay. Are there any other integrations that you guys are curious about? Let's see, I'll look in the chat here if there's anything. You guys have been busy in the chat. I thought you guys were quiet, but you're not. Okay.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on chat for you in case there were things we wanted to hold to the end, but Brendan and ML have been great about just answering as you go, so that was wonderful. Does
Excellent.
anybody have any wrap-up questions? We have about 5 minutes where we can finish up asking some questions. Or we can head back to the main room a little early. We'll be going to a break right after this before we close out the day. So,
I do have a question.
yeah.
Hi, Annie. Great presentation. I learned so much. So for the last time I used the piping and repeat function, I used it for a bunch of open text questions. And when I went into the report, I realized that none of my answers pulled in into that report section, unless if I went into the individual reports to see each of those rows. And I wasn't sure if that's normal because usually when you have open text questions, you see them in a list. But I
Mhm.
didn't see any of my responses in that list for each of those piped questions, except like until I went into the individual questions. And I was just wondering if that was normal or I did something wrong on my end.
Now, let's see. When you say that you were piping into open text, would this, for example, be, piping options, but one says other, please specify, and then there's a text box next to it where you type in that other option? Or was this more like a text box or a plain essay
Yeah,
question?
it was an essay question. So for each of the bus stops that they selected, they had to tell me, attributes about those bus stops that they wanted me to include.
Mhm.
So it was an open text question.
Okay. That is not typically how it behaves. And this is where we would say we should contact support so that way we can do some further troubleshooting and see exactly what tripped that up and then also how to fix it and pull that data in.
Thank you. I figured it was because it was my first time trying it. So I was
Hmm.
like, I'll just pull the report into Excel and clean it there. So it worked fine on my end, but I was just wondering if probably I did something wrong.
It's hard to say without seeing the survey, but this is, it shows the importance of making sure that you test before you go live and check out those reports, check out those exports, and make sure that everything's looking good. Okay. Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you, Annie, for this presentation and demonstrating. I learned a lot of great stuff too that I can't wait to go play around in with for myself. So we will be rejoining the main room. We'll take a break just in case you want to start your break early. We are coming back at 3:40 Eastern. Wait. Oh, we're not taking a break. I'm sorry. We're going right back to closing remarks. So don't take a break because we're going to do closing remarks. So head back to the main room and the rest of the groups will join us in just a couple of minutes and we'll do closing remarks and wrap up the conference today. So thank you again, Annie. I appreciate you being here with us and
Absolutely.
we'll
Thank
see you all
you.
back in the main room. Thanks.